The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Coming to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Tuesday night, April 7th, 2026. Not 2025, 2026. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 334, if you're keeping score at home. And my God, time flies when you're having fun. Our guest tonight is Laura Ranger. She is an author, normally a fiction author, but she's written her first nonfiction book, called Taken. It's about the alien abduction of Carl Higdon. If you know this show, you know that interests us greatly. And we're putting her on the screen now from where in Mississippi, did you say?
Just outside Jackson.
Jackson, Mississippi. Laura Ranger, hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so now we were talking before we came on the air. This is your first, you're a fiction author. This is your first nonfiction book. What prompted you to write this?
The subject. I happened to be introduced to the Higdons, and just after I became aware of Carl Higdon and what happened with him, he did pass. But I was connected to his widow, who is just a lovely woman. And there was something that I always felt was missing from this story. My question was, in the early 70s, there were a lot of people coming forward saying, you know, I was abducted, I've seen aliens, I've seen spaceships, whatever. And everyone was basically laughed at.
Yeah, blown off, right, yeah.
Here's a man who had only lived in this town for 2 years. And not only was he believed, but this town supported him and what he was saying. I thought, there's more to this story, and I want to know more. So I interviewed Marjorie. I talked with her at length. She gave me whatever the pictures that are in the book came primarily from Marjorie. I went through and dug up as much information as I could regarding this story. Sometimes they had it wrong.
Yeah.
So I always went back to whatever Carl said himself, whatever came out of his mouth, whether it was his transcripts with Dr. Sprinkle, or if they were his interviews that he had previously. Even toward the end, he was on oxygen and he had a hard time breathing, but he still was all there, and he would relay the information as he recalled it. That's what I always went back to. So I did a lot of digging, but I always came back to what Carl was saying.
You brought up here several things that's fascinating me about this, about the fact that, first of all, he was considered an absolute pillar of that community. And yes, people believed him, where a lot of people who had alien abduction experiences, or they said they did, weren't. There was a lot of corroborating evidence here, more than usual, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. And also the fact that he never changed his story and never tried to profit from it.
No, never. And that was very interesting to me, that it was important to the Higdons that they weren't in this to make money.
Right.
And the government could very often really go after people who had any kind of evidence or things having to do with any abductions, they would go after them hard.
Yeah, they would. Still do.
And the Higdons were different. They do believe that their wires were tapped for a while, but they didn't have helicopters dive bombing their house or anything like that other people have had, which is sad.
Yeah.
The only thing that they feel somebody was involved in was in the story, Carl had shot a bullet and it hit an unseen object and it ended up turning the bullet inside out.
Yeah.
He put it in his canteen. His wife Marjorie laid it up, and she just thought that was so strange that she took it to the police station. They looked at it and they said, this is a bullet and it's been turned inside out and there's no lead. And Marjorie also hunted. She said, how does that happen? They said, we have no idea. So she thought, they were very frugal people, but she thought, I need to have this professionally photographed. So she paid for that. And then later they allowed the bullet to be investigated or
analyzed.
Studied. Yes, analyzed. And it never showed back up. Nobody knew where it went.
My God, who would have thought that?
Right?
Let's put your book on the screen here. It's called Taken, the complete Carl Higdon story, and you published this in June of last year. Now, you talking about Marjorie Higdon, Carl's wife. She wrote a book in 2017. I've read both of them. I read hers previously, which was the reason I was kind of distracted the years. You filled in a lot of more detail than she did, although the story is basically tracked as far as I can tell.
Yes, she did. Marjorie did hers really more therapeutically.
Yeah,
she felt like she really needed to put what they had experienced on paper.
And no offense to her, it reads like that too. Yours reads more like an investigative account. Hers reads a little more like therapy, but that's not necessarily bad.
No, it shows where she was, where her thinking was, and yes, it was. I thought it was very important, and that was one of the pieces that I researched when I was putting this together. But I kept saying, Marjorie, you don't understand the significance of this. You don't understand how deep this is, because why was Carl not questioned? And the words that came out of the people of his town. Now, he'd only lived in Rawlins 2 years.
Well, this is Rawlins, Wyoming, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He'd only lived there 2 years, but the people of the town said if it was anyone else, they wouldn't have believed him.
Right.
It was Carl, so everybody believed him.
Yeah, I know. It's really amazing. So let's
actually. That was his character. So his character is what I tried to capture in this book.
I think you did too.
Okay.
Let's go to the actual incident. So this is October 25th, 1974, right outside of Rawlins. So why don't you go on and basically tell the story here?
So Carl was a foreman on an oil rig. And the reason he was only there for 2 years at that point, they lived there a total of 10, was because wherever the oil was drilling, that's where he went. So he was, Nebraska is where he met Marjorie. Wyoming.
He would be what you call a journeyman, right?
Yes, absolutely. Right. And at this particular location, he was the foreman. Now, the way that it works in the oil field is you either have a full team or you have nobody. You don't work without a full team. So it was a Friday. He went to pick up the men in his team, and 2 of them had the flu, which meant no work. He had just gotten a brand new rifle. So he went home. He called Marjorie, who was at work, and he said, can't work today. I'm going to go hunt in the forests that were about 50 miles south of Rawlins, which he had never been to before. And he said, I have my license for elk hunting. I'm going to go elk hunting. And she said,
well,
okay.
Can you clarify this? he was going to go to one place and then
he ended up in Medicine Bow National Forest.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Because when he left, and this was very Carl, when he left, one of his things that he did on the side that he did for fun was he would work on cars, and he was heading to I can't think of the name of it now, but he was heading to the forest, and he encountered these two men that were broke down on the side of the road with their truck. So he got out and helped them to get their truck started. He was a big coffee drinker. So he said, let's have a cup of coffee. So they're chatting, and they said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going elk hunting. Where are you going? He told them, and they said, oh no, you want to go to Medicine Bow. It's much better elk hunting there. He said, okay. So he just rerouted slightly and went there. When he got there, of course, he's not familiar with the area, and he was a wise man. He parked on the top of a hill, and there he encountered a forest ranger, and they had coffee, chatting. The forest ranger says, why are you parking all this way away? And he said, because I'm not familiar with the area. He was in a company truck, which was a 2-wheel drive. And he said, I'd rather be on foot since I don't know the terrain. So he went in, and he came to a clearing, and he saw 5 elk across the field. And one of them was a bull elk. Well, he had his license for a bull elk, and that's what he was going for. Hunting wasn't just for sport. Hunting fed his family.
Yeah.
So he aimed for the bull, and he said when he shot, everything went in slow motion. There was no sound. Normally you'd have the sound of nature. And of course, once a gun is fired, that just stirs them up.
Right.
The elk did not move. Nature ceased to make any sound or move. And he watched the bullet come out of that gun, which you normally would not be able to do, but it slowed everything down. He watched it go about 50 to 60 feet in front of him, and he was very good with distance. That was just one of his things. Mm-hmm. And he heard it, what he called splat. It hit something that he could not see and dropped into the snow. So he walked over to it, retrieved it.
You also said that he felt no kickback from the gun either.
No, he did not. No. And, this was a Magnum rifle, brand new. He should have felt, but there was none of that. It was all surreal, all unnatural. When he picked the bullet up out of the snow, it was a mangled piece of metal, and he shoved it in his canteen. And he heard something over his shoulder, like a snap of a twig. However, when he looked, and as a rifleman, he immediately pointed his gun down. And as he looked up, there was a man standing up over his shoulder. And Carl said he didn't walk, he floated. So what he heard, we really don't know. To him, it sounded like the crack of a twig when you step on it. But this man didn't walk on the ground, he floated. And he was completely dressed in black from his neck, covering his toes. And he later told Carl it's because our sun burns him. So, but he was also jaundicey looking.
Yeah,
and,
something, Laura, did this occur to you? I've seen those drawings, and Carl said they're accurate. And I should have brought one here to put up on the screen. This guy's not attractive.
No, not even remotely.
Raw hair. He doesn't have a chin.
Doesn't have a chin. No, he had.
No.
Yeah, he was jaundicey.
Yeah.
He had that yellow tinge to him. He also had 3 teeth on the top and 3 teeth on the bottom.
That's not attractive either.
Yeah, I wouldn't look twice. I'd look twice because it's different. But
I know. I kind of felt sorry for this guy, but I guess that's normal on their planet. I don't know. It's like,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it was later determined that he had the appearance he did was due to their lack of nutrition.
Yeah.
And his teeth weren't. It wasn't necessary for him to have all the teeth that we do.
I'm kind of getting ahead of the story here, but since you just brought that up, so you talk about David Paulides in your book, or Paulides, I think his name is,
yes.
About the fact he talked to Carl, and Paulides has said, he is like investigated like 1,000 of these things, and he says a lot of these people disappear in places where there's a predominance of elk. And this guy told Carl that they were there to get the elk.
Yes, they were. Yep. Yeah. He said that they come to our earth to take the livestock and game and things from the sea.
Yeah.
They can't sustain any of that on their planet. They cannot. Fish and things of the sea are out of the question, but they do try to cross or breed on their planet things like the elk.
So apparently the elk must be particularly tasty.
Or nutritious. I'm not sure.
I mean, deer are a lot easier to get. I think you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, they also talk about the fact they get deer, but they prefer the elk. So I don't.
Do. The deer, the elk, the cows. Yeah, you hear a lot about that too. But no, they and really what they do is they turn what they get into pills. And those pills are what provide them the nutrition. And this being said to Carl, "Are you hungry?" And Carl said,
No. I got to get back to, because I thought this was fascinating. You said the first thing, or Carl said the first thing he said is, "How you doing?"
Yeah, he did. And I said, like what we would say, "How you doing?"
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. How you doing?
You can travel 165 light years, and it's how you doing.
Well, it's not like you and I just encountered him. I mean, this is a really weird looking being.
Yeah. Well, now the other thing I have to ask you too, because you did not mention this in the book. So but you said Carl did say he didn't move his mouth. But do you think this was telepathic, or did Carl understand that concept, or do you think maybe it was, because I think a lot of people can't tell.
Yeah, he did hear him in English.
Yeah.
Yes. And on their trip back, same thing. It was just the two of them, and they had a whole conversation, and he did hear it in English. But his lips did not move.
So the other thing you brought up too, I found fascinating, because this never would have occurred to me, and that is technically this is not an alien abduction, because the alien asked Carl, "Do you want to come and go for a ride?" And so it was not against his will, and I never thought about that, but I guess you're right. It's not an abduction.
That's exactly right. Yeah, he was a willing participant. Not everybody is, but Carl was.
So it was, "How you doing? And you want to go for a ride?"
And what was interesting was that was not really Carl's nature. He was very much a helper, but that was really not Carl's nature. However, Carl said he felt very compelled whenever he was around. And the being's name is Azo-1.
Yeah.
He always felt very compelled, not only when he was in his presence, but later they would telepathically communicate. And same deal, he would feel compelled to do what he was told.
So pick up the story, please. So he asked Carl, "Do you want to go for a ride?" And Carl says, "Yeah, why not?"
So he first says, "Yeah, how you doing?" And Carl said, good. And he said, are you hungry? And Carl said, yeah, a little. And he floated this pack of pills over to Carl. Now, Carl would never even take an aspirin if he had a headache. He was hard pressed to take medicine if a doctor prescribed it. But he did take one of these pills. And Azo 1 told him that it would provide nourishment for 4 days. So Carl later would call them his 4-day pills.
Yeah.
But then he said, do you want to come with us? Now, I don't know about you, but I'd be asking a whole lot of questions. Who's us? Where are we going?
Yeah.
How long am I going to be gone? When I'm coming back? No, Carl just said, okay. He said he was transported, and he said it felt like he was floating from where he was. When he looked forward, he saw a transparent cube. He could see the forest on the other side of the cube, but it was transparent. Now, this is what I found fascinating. So he sees this transparent cube, and he's seeing the forest on the other side, like you're looking through glass. He's transported into this cube, and the cube to him was 5 by 5 by 7. So not very big. Azo brought Carl into this cube. There were seats, 2 other aliens, and the 5 elk, including that bull elk, in this cube. So suddenly inside doesn't look like 5 by 5 by 7.
Well, I probably don't have to tell you this. This has been reported by a lot of people that they go into a space that shouldn't work, and it does.
Absolutely, it does.
Christopher Stone, the Army guy who was passed, he said he went into a flying saucer that was about 30 feet in diameter, and when he went in there, it was a hangar about the size of a football field. So this is a fairly common occurrence, apparently.
And time and space is completely different from what we experience. Absolutely. He was seated into a chair that to him looked like a seat that you'd have in a sports car. He had belts that strapped him down and something put on his head. The elk were behind him, but there was a mirror up in the corner. And when he looked in the mirror, he could see all 5 elk in a cage behind him. There were seats to his side. That's where the other 2 aliens and then Azo 1 sat beside him. And the panel, which operated this machinery, was in front of them. No one touched it, but he watched the levers move. And then they were being lifted off the ground, and he said he looked down and it looked like a big blue ball beneath him. He was looking through the floor. He said that they told him that they went 163,000 light miles, not light years, which is what we're accustomed to. I got to turn my light on.
Did anyone ever figure out what a light mile was?
Not to my knowledge. And I went looking for it. I could not find anything like that. But even so, we went to a different.
We don't really know how far they went, basically. No.
They went to a different planet, and it took minutes.
Mm-hmm.
When they landed, there was a tower that to Carl looked like an upside down the Space Needle in Seattle. And there were people, humans, that were standing just outside of it on the ground. And Carl said that the older gentleman that was there seemed like he looked familiar to Carl. He didn't know him personally, but he looked familiar. He didn't know where or why or how. He later remembered seeing him on a news report. The man lived in California at the time. And whether or not he ever came back, I don't have a clue. But there were a couple teens there as well. And but Carl said they didn't look like they were there under duress.
Mm-hmm.
Then they transported him the same as they put him into the cube. They took him out and into this tower, and he didn't walk. He was just floated along. They went up in an elevator, went to a room where a part of the wall came out at him and scanned his body head to toe, and then went back into the wall. Carl kept complaining that the lights were hurting his eyes. And this being, Azo 1, said, well, that's okay. If we were going to keep you, your eyes would adjust, but we'll take you back. And later, when Carl was glad, but later he believes the reason that they were going to take him back so quickly was when they scanned him, they probably realized he had had a vasectomy years before. Mm-hmm. He had at that point 7 children, and he and Marjorie decided no more, and he had a vasectomy. So he really wouldn't be of use to them. So he was floated back down into the cube. To come back, it was just Carl and Azo 1.
I want to interject here, because you also said in your book that David Paulides said that all the people that had been missing from that part of the country, he was the only one who had a vasectomy.
Right.
Yeah, right. I thought that was interesting too.
And returned.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you're right. He was the only one that was returned, and he was also the only one that had a vasectomy. Right.
Right.
So
So that's why Carl really believes it was his saving grace. Yeah. But he found out that Azo 1 on his planet is considered a hunter and gatherer. Uh-huh. So he's the one that would go and get the fish and the game and whatnot to get back to their planet. Why there were 3 of them at that one time, I have no idea. But on the trip to their planet, there were 3 aliens. On the return, it was just Azo. Well, since he was bringing him back, Azo floated the pills out of Carl's pocket and put them on a shelf. He also had Carl's gun, and he was fascinated by it because this is a brand new gun for Carl, but it was antiquated to Azo 1. And he really wanted to keep this gun, but on his planet, they wouldn't allow it. So he had to return Carl with the gun. And we've heard stories of people just being dropped out of spaceships, and sometimes they don't live to tell the rest, but very often they're hurt. Carl, when he was returned, had his shoulder was really bothering him. And we wondered, had he been dropped out of this spaceship? However, under hypnosis, when Carl started to get his memories back, Dr. Sprinkle, who worked with a lot of abductees, and said Carl was very believable.
Yeah. I want to interject here too, but you also mentioned basically in your book, most of the stuff Carl related, he remembered without hypnosis, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. But some parts were so deeply seated, and some things like Dr. Sprinkle was very good at hypnosis. So things like lights would sometimes really bother Carl's eyes. And if Carl were talking about his abduction or his trip, his eyes would just start watering profusely. So Dr. Sprinkle gave him a hypnotic suggestion to ease that. The other was whenever he was talking about coming back, his shoulder would start to bother him, really hurt. So Dr. Sprinkle gave him a hypnotic suggestion to ease that as well.
And we should point out here now, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, at that time period, was a very prominent person in the UFO community. He was working at the University of Laramie?
He was.
Yeah, at that time. So he was geographically very close. And yeah. How did Carl end up connecting with Dr. Sprinkle?
Well, the man who drew the picture,
Yeah.
he was connected with Dr. Sprinkle. And he, after talking with Carl, and he got connected to Carl because he read a news article that was done in Rawlins at the time. He reached out to Dr. Sprinkle and connected him with Carl. And then Carl and Dr. Sprinkle were friends until they passed.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about Carl is that, okay, he was an outdoorsman, he was an oilman. I mean, he was kind of your prototypical American rugged man, and yet he still knew enough, the fact that this was bothering, that he needed help. And based on what you said, he talked for the rest of his life. He said, if this happens to you, get some help, because he said he basically came to really rely on Dr. Sprinkle, didn't he?
Yes, he did. One of the things that happened once Carl got his memories back, and he was 3 days without memories. As a matter of fact,
do you mind? Can we go back to the part where where Osso actually drops him off? Because the important part of the story here is that, okay, so he saw this DNR guy when he first got there, which is kind of a corroboration of the fact of where he parked his truck, because that's not where they found his truck.
No. When Osso was dropping him off, he lowered him to the ground, and Carl took a step and slipped on a rock and fell down, and that's how he actually hurt his shoulder. He got up, and he couldn't remember who he was, but he was looking for his truck. So he started walking down this road, and it was very treacherous and deep ruts in this road, and really couldn't call it a road. It's only because obviously vehicles had traveled it. And he ended up walking past the truck. He didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
Walked past it, but it was getting late and he was cold, and realized, that's the only thing I've seen. I better go back there and see if I can get in it, at least stay protected.
And Laura, was it about 3 miles where he parked it? Am I right up on that?
Yeah. When he remembered when they were going up, when they were leaving, Osso one, in the book, there's a good sketch of him that this artist had done. Osso one's, he didn't have hands. He had cones at the end of his fabric. And Carl watched him point the cone at his truck on the hill, and he watched it move. So where the truck ended up would have been physically impossible for a two-wheel drive to get there.
Yeah.
It could not have happened.
And there were no tracks either.
No tracks.
Yeah.
And it ended up, there were the only vehicles involved in the search and rescue were four-wheel drive vehicles. They kept getting stuck.
Right.
And they were trying to pull him out, pull his vehicle out, and they kept getting stuck and having to pull each other out and then start over and that sort of thing. So
everyone seems to agree you couldn't have driven to this location. Right.
Absolutely correct.
Right.
You see some of the pictures in the book. You can see how a two-wheel drive would have been impossible there. He couldn't have driven in there. And then too, Carl says to this ranger, I'm not familiar, so I'm walking in.
Right.
So, yeah. But there was a CB in the truck. Back in those days, everybody had a CB, yeah. But somebody was talking to him.
This is 1974, and for the youngins watching this, that was a long time ago. And there were no cell phones. There were no cell phones. That's right. You may not have a hard time believing that, but it's true. There was a time where there were no cell phones.
And so somebody was talking on this radio, and so Carl's talking to them, and they're asking, "Who are you?" And he's saying, "I don't know." And they said, well, look in the glove box, see if it has any identifying information. So he does, and he realizes, okay, it's this company's truck. Well, it was his company's truck.
Yeah.
And so his bosses got involved, and they were 2 hours away, and they came in to meet up with him. In the meantime, Marjorie gets home, hasn't heard from Carl, and she's starting to get worried. Now, these are two people that did everything together, willing to work through, and they divorced.
So I'm no trained psychologist, but it seems to me that if you're going to take the time to call somebody that you don't know and tell them they're crazy, you must have some sort of personal interior motive, huh? I mean, it's like, why would you do that? I mean, you're just wasting your own time, you know?
Right. But Carl really believed these people needed somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things he kept putting out all the time was talk to somebody. And
Right.
if you need to talk to me, I'm here. And he always would say, well, he didn't care. It was their dime, because back in those days, you paid for your long distance calls too.
People don't know about that anymore either.
No. A phone booth and a quarter. Back then it was a dime.
So finally, Marjorie ends up meeting Carl at the hospital. They take Carl to the hospital. He's all messed up.
She actually saw him at the end. When they brought him out at the bottom of this mountain, she saw him there. He didn't know who she was. And she said he looked cold. So she took her coat off and she was going to put it around his shoulders. And he's saying, don't touch me, don't touch me. And who are you? At that point, they'd been married, I think it was 17 years, something like that. And then she did stay with him. He went like this for 3 days. And she did stay with him as much as she could through those 3 days. The interesting thing, too, was when he was hospitalized, they did all kinds of tests and scans. The doctors thought he must be on drugs. And they tested him for that. And, of course, he was clean. But they did find his blood was very rich. He also, years prior, he had tuberculosis. So he had scarring on his lungs. And even just a few years prior to this, he had a test and showed the scarring on his lungs. When they tested him in the hospital, he had no scarring.
Interesting.
So no traces of that tuberculosis.
Do you or did Carl think that the reason is professor of history at Citrus College in Glendora?
Why would they come forward? Why would they have the concept? He is connected to some people in Hollywood. And as I would write a chapter, I'd send it over to Al, and he was reading. He got 9 chapters in and sent it to a buddy of his. And he came back and said, that's my book. I want that book. So who knows?
He might make some money off
number one bestseller with that in October.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool. So when you studied about how you create now, you don't know, there's this whole, there's the Slender Man thing. And I know there's like Native American Indian tribes are talking about conjuring up people. It's like, what did you conclude or how did you?
I went to stem cells and DNA.
What?
Stem cells and DNA.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes. I did the whole scientific route. And the tagline on it is, to get a boyfriend, I made a monster.
Yeah.
The question at the end of the book is, who's the monster?
So is the protagonist mixing test tubes or what the hell?
Oh, yeah. I had to look and find, she's from a very brilliant, very rich family.
Huh?
And in her basement, which is fully equipped, she uses the equipment they have because her father had attempted this years before.
Oh.
And so she finds his journals and doesn't know, well, why didn't you complete it? You could have finished this. You could have made a person. And he says, just walk away from it. Leave it alone. And she wears him down till he lets her read his journals. And from all of that, so it's the whole evolution of a being.
So is there some horror aspect to this too? Or traditional level, or I don't know if you call it that, or this is intriguing.
Not like the Frankenstein thought, because the being that she creates is really a very attractive male.
Unlike Ozzo.
Unlike Ozzo, very much total opposite. And they end up, she's actually stolen somebody's, she's stolen both the stem cells and the DNA to make this being. But the person she steals the DNA from finds out, because it's like he's looking in a mirror.
Right, right.
So it has all kinds of twists that direction. But at the very end is when you realize, you question, who exactly is the monster?
This is actually pretty cool, Laura. Good for you. I hope you make some money off of this.
Thank you. And then I wrote what I thought was a standalone called Royalty, and that's Angels and Demons. And sorry, I have a light. It's on a timer sensor.
I know. I thought you were reaching for a book there, but
no, but
well, now you also
have made for me.
Yeah, right. That's the book, right?
Right. But I did this book on Angels and Demons, and it was to be a standalone. And when I got to the end of it, the people who had read it came back saying, and I got so much feedback that it had impacted people positively. And they kept saying, we've got to have more of these characters. You've got to write more. And I thought, it's the end of the story. What are you talking about? And I thought about it, and I thought, I could see where this could go. So this year, I've completed the 3 books that are.
Oh, congratulations.
So it's all 4, and we're working very hard to get those edited and out this year. So it's the Royal Lineage series.
Yeah.
And all 4 books are about angels and demons. And
so now you actually run your own publishing company.
I do.
Foundations Books, and it's at foundationsbooks.net, and that's foundations with an S.
Right.
I got to admit, I personally thought that was a little awkward, but whatever, I'm not running your business. So how did you end up starting this? And this is
my goodness.
You're not just self-publishing here. You're publishing other people. This is a real.
Oh, yes. A lot of other people now.
Right.
And most publishing houses, especially small press, they end up having to close their doors within 6 months. We've just celebrated 10 years. So
congratulations, man.
Thank you. I was traditionally published originally. I had written Rogue and Deception. I predominantly write suspense thriller. And the Christian series is Christian suspense thriller. But this friend of mine at the time said, you need to start a publishing house. I said, 1, I don't have time. 2, I wouldn't know the first thing to do. And 3, I'm traditionally published. Why would I do that? And he kept saying, no, you have to do that. No, you're crazy.
Well, forgive me. Why would you do it?
I really didn't want to. I really did not want to. Why would I? Because I had a publisher who, by this point, I'd turn it over. She'd say done.
Right.
So I said, I have too many questions. He said, you give me all the questions, I'll get you answers. So at the end of the day, I had written, small font, a whole page of questions. And one of them was, how do I get paid? So it didn't make sense to me. And at the end of all of those questions, I thought, well, okay, because I started with just $10,000 and thought, okay, let's give it a try. And
this was 10 years ago?
10 years ago.
I don't even really know. Did Kindle books exist 10 years ago?
They did.
All right.
They did. But it was important. It was important to me back then, not only to have books in paperback, but to also be able to offer them in hardcover. So I do have a series writer who, she's the only one who sells hardcovers, but yeah, her books sell in hardcover as well as paperback. But I went in with the idea that it was going to be all genres, including children's books, because it's so important to me that children begin reading at a young age.
Yeah.
They were they were a nightmare to publish, and nobody in my company knew how to do it. So I had to learn how to do this.
Laura, is it a nightmare because there's so many illustrations? Is it the technical aspect of printing the books?
Having to have them just so to get into a print copy, and children want physical. They don't want to just look on a some do, but they want the physical book too.
Right.
So it was important to me. But what ended up happening, I was in business for almost a year, and trust me, that year was a nightmare, because if it could be done wrong, I did it. That's how my website is .net, because my original site was .com. And the company I was with at the time shut it down and told me that basically they held me hostage. For $3,000, they would rebuild my website that I built myself.
Yeah.
And I said, why would I do that? But it was a Monday, and Black Friday was coming, and I'd already had all these authors that were going to be involved in this sale. So they had me over a barrel. And I thought, I don't think so. So I changed the name and went with a different company and rebuilt the website in a week and had that sale. But I was learning, instead of just throwing the towel in every time, I was learning valuable lessons, and I had a lot of really good people by my side. And when I was in business almost a year, I signed an author. I've got 3 of her series now. S.J. Pierce, Susan James Pierce. And we got talking. She was doing all of her own marketing. I was paying people ridiculous amounts, and they didn't do talking. And I realized, wait a minute, this one knows what she's doing. So she then became my promotions and marketing director, and she still is. Close with me running this company now.
So I just assume between your personal writing and running the company, this is like 80 hour.
It's crazy. I have a full-time day job.
You do? Oh my God.
I work 8 to 5, then I go home, change hats, work from 6 to midnight, drop in bed. One of these days I need to retire from.
Girlfriend, you need a vacation at least, and nothing else.
Don't you think?
For sure. Yeah, my God.
We moved our day job offices, and I love this office. And I told my boss, nah, I think I'll hang in here. But I'm telling you, I'm so blessed here, because my day job is closed. So my bosses are wonderful to say, you know, if you get your work done, then I can actually.
Fantastic.
It is. I'm blessed.
Good for you, man. I really enjoyed talking with you here. This has been fantastic. I've enjoyed read. The what was it? It's called Made for You. Is that what that?
Made for me.
Made for me. And so this.
Young adult science fiction.
Right. But
yes.
I'm under the impression it's probably going to interest a lot of adults too.
So. Geek is going to love this book, because I really did the deep dive, and my editor was fabulous. He'd come back and let's rewrite that.
God, in science fiction, does anyone even care if anything's believable? I don't even know.
Yes, only because I do. She's making a person. I suppose it has to be. Yeah, right.
Laura, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate your time.
You. I appreciate you.
You've learned a lot. So you take care. We'll talk to you soon. Our thanks to Laura Ranger there. That was a fascinating conversation. This thing about Carl, actually one of the most credible UFO abduction stories, although like we pointed out during the interview, both of us, I just find this just hilarious. First thing the alien asks him, how you doing? And then the second thing is, you want to go for a ride? Yeah, okay. And he went for a ride. Who knows where? They never figured out how. They were very explicit. They told him it was 168,000 light miles from Earth, but we don't know what light miles are, so we don't know how far that is. So I've got this is footnotes for Tuesday, April 7th, and I'm in this theme here. I'm going back to there have been 6 over the last year. There have been 6 different people who have been either gone missing or killed, involved in high level military technology research in the United States, and 4 of them are professionally related to each other. Now, the most prominent one, and it wasn't the first, but it was one that drew attention to all this, was Neil McClassland, who was the head of the Air Force Research Office. And he went missing. He apparently walked out his door and never came back about a month ago now. I think it was something like March 2nd or something like that. This is the interesting thing about this. His wife released a statement. Now I'm going to read this, and you have to understand her husband is missing and appears maybe permanently. So you think that she would be in a little bit of distress. But if anything, this is quite flippant. This is what she said, quote, Neil does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash site stored at Wright Pat, she said. To go on, she said, though at this point, with absolutely no sign of him, maybe the best hypothesis is that the aliens beamed him up to the mothership. However, no sighting of a mothership hovering above the Sandia Mountains has been reported. Now, first of all, she basically said, and she, in her refute, she acknowledged or tacitly acknowledged the fact there are ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash at Wright Pat, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. She said, I'm going to read this again, her first sentence. Neil does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash stored at Wright Pat. Well, how does she know? It's the craziest thing. It's obvious. It's like he told her, and she's decided to let the cat out of the bag. On top of that, then she goes on. She's talking about him getting beamed up to the mothership. She's making light of the situation, and yet there's a good possibility she's never going to see her husband again. It's really, really odd. You'd think somebody in this position would be in quite amount of distress, but nope, not her. So Chris Swecker, who's the former assistant director of the FBI, he said that he thinks that these people have been taken by a foreign adversary, most likely Russia, China, or Ukraine, and that may be true. It's a very, very crazy situation. The Sentinel News Network, which reports stuff on defense contract technology, they've reported on this, and they've the really weird thing here is another weird thing that, and I did mention this when we first talked about it, but this bears repeating. Monica Riza, one of the women who one of the people who disappeared, who was professionally joined with McCaslin at the hip, in the sense that she invented, I think it's called Mondaloy, if I'm right, this special metal alloy that is used in American rocket launches. That she, like McCaslin, she walked out her door, and she also lives near Los Alamos, so was a hiker. That's in Arizona. Before she walked out her door, her or somebody else, but probably her, because there's no reference of anyone else, there's no evidence anyone else was in the house. She had 2 cell phones. She had a personal cell phone. She had her Los Alamos professional business cell phone. She factory reset both of them before she left the house. Who does that? You don't do that. Now there's a possibility somebody else did it, but like I said, there's no evidence anyone else was actually in the house. So maybe it wasn't her, but somebody did, So it's like these people didn't want to be found, or they knew they were going away. God, who knows? I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going on here? This is really, really crazy stuff. So Swecker thinks they've been abducted by a foreign adversary. I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I know the chances of the likelihood of this is slim. This is a possibility and not a probability. But yeah, they might have been abducted by extraterrestrials. They might have been, crazier things have happened. So, I mean, like I said, I doubt it. If you're going to ask me to put money on it, I'd say no. But I mean, I suppose it's possible. These people actually knew a lot. McCaslin probably is one of these guys who he will die wherever he dies if he's in debt already, with more secrets in his brain than almost anybody else in America. So it's really, really just weird. Now, in the meantime, there are a couple congressmen, most specifically Anna Paulina Luna and Tim Burchett, who have gone on the record saying Luna's has a bill going through Congress. She's trying to force the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, to release 47 videos that she has seen to the public so they can see them. And she said it will blow people's minds. And Burchett said there's stuff that he's been briefed on. He said that the public, because he's also said, and what was his actual quote? I can't remember. I didn't actually write it down. It's terrible. That people I think it was that the public would become unhinged if they saw this stuff. And this has been reported for many years that the Defense Department, the Pentagon, has videos of UFOs that are way clearer than anybody's released. As a matter of fact, it appears, this is speculation on my part, but it appears that some of the videos they've released, they've actually deliberately blurred so people couldn't actually get a really good look. But apparently they have video that's crystal clear of stuff, weird stuff flying around in the sky and close up and all sorts of stuff like that. Whereas Burchett said that if the public actually saw the briefings he saw, people would be completely unhinged. And I think part of this is now, and I can't remember, we just did the video with Laura, but don't think we actually talked about this, but I've talked about this with other people on the show about the fact that there's the possibility people in the Pentagon who have talked to, like my friend, the late great Jazz Shaw, have said the thing that's mind-blowing is that a lot of this stuff isn't coming from other planets. It's actually interdimensional. It's coming from other parallel dimensions in our space, in our universal space. So in other words, we wouldn't see it. It could be standing right next to you and you would not see it. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to comprehend. It really is. And so, and that may be even one of the reasons the Pentagon hasn't wanted to talk about this, that it goes way beyond just machines flying here from other planets. Although I'm certain, as Laura talked about with Carl Higdon, I'm certain that's part of it. I am. But at any rate. And then finally, astronaut Jean-François Clairvoy, and he's a French astronaut, believe it or not. He was one of the people on the